Please stand, pledge allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Welcome to tonight's meeting, November 8th, 2022. Tonight's meeting will be conducted in accordance with the Open Meetings Act, a copy of which is posted on the wall. First item of business would be approval of minutes for October 25th. Any questions, comments, corrections, anything anybody saw? Surely Lori spelled something wrong somewhere.
I couldn't find anything.
If not, is there a motion to pass the minutes, approve the minutes for October 25th?
So moved.
Motion by Olson, is there a second?
Second?
Second by Radcliffe, roll call.
Ellwanger,
Yes.
Sherman,
Yes.
Galloway,
Yes.
Radcliffe,
Yes.
Olson.
Yes.
Motion carries 5 in favor, 0 against. Item number 3, comments by the public. If anybody has anything they'd wish to comment on that is not otherwise on the agenda, come up to the podium. I'll have you state your name and address. Just understand that council, the policy, city policy is give you an opportunity to speak. We won't necessarily respond to give all parties fair chance to comment.
To understand. My name is Joshua Wood. I am Operations Director for Stevenson Newspapers, which owns the City Sun Telegraph. I was actually in the office last week just to get some paperwork together to start the process of replacing that tattered, old, very old tattered awning on 12th Avenue. So, and I understand that because it's on 12th Avenue, it's in the historical district, so I've got the paperwork working with the current owner of the building, as well as I've reached out to Chief Signs, who I understand is a member of the Cheyenne County Chamber of Commerce, to go through the full process of properly getting that replaced in something that is a little more fitting of what seems to be a rejuvenating downtown. So,
I appreciate it.
So
And
that's all I had.
the one thing I would caution you, and correct me if I'm wrong, David, but be careful not to do improvements or
Before
repairs
it's- yeah. We
before
talked about
you
that.
apply
Yeah.
for any incentive program money, because that's pretty strict that has to be approved first before you can get reimbursed for anything.
Yep, no, we haven't made any kind of steps forward. Right at this point, I'm just waiting on some estimates and some designs from Chief before we appear before the Historical Preservation Society.
Perfect. Yeah, just want to point that out because unfortunately we had to deny a request or two in the past, which unfortunately that's the way it was written, so.
Totally understand. No, I'm not unfamiliar with municipal proceedings, so
Okay.
happy to cross Ts and dot Is. So,
We appreciate you taking the time to come to Sydney.
yeah, of course.
Yeah.
It's a
Thank you.
wonderful town.
Thank you.
Excited to have that.
Anybody else? Going once, going twice? Okay, if not, we'll move on to item number 4, public hearing, consideration of resolution 2022-1101, Class CK liquor license from James D. Lenzen. So we will open the public hearing at 7:04.
Is there anybody here that is speaking to us?
Well, yeah, I guess we can invite you to come on up, state name and stuff here at the podium, and we can,
I've heard no.
okay. Yeah, you can just kind of give us a brief summary, what you got going on, and we'll see if anybody has any questions or anything.
My name is Jim Lenzen. I own and operate Jimmy L's. We took over the building at 1412, right by the railroad tracks there, and are putting an event venue in it. So that's what we're looking for our liquor license for.
So it's going to be open just on weekends and special
No,
events? Or- Just
special
special
occasions.
Okay.
For now, that may change in the future, but right now it's just for special events.
Are you operating out of their new place of business then, or?
We've used it for a warehouse all summer. It's passed through the passed through the health inspection and everything's good there. So we've been conducting business and cooking out of that all summer. So
And then the liquor license, for clarification, does that apply just to the building then?
to the building,
To-
and then I applied for a catering.
He is doing a catering.
Catering license?
Yep, he has a catering endorsement.
But the alcohol doesn't go like with the food truck or does it?
No, no.
Okay.
Just the building, and then if they were going to cater an event.
Okay. That's the only thing I wanted to ask.
And it's my
Yeah.
understanding you might have a second, do you have a second business in there still too, or is it just this one now?
Just this one.
Okay.
Just this one. So.
Any questions for Jim? Chief, anything?
No objections.
Okay. Nobody else got anything to ask or say? Going once, twice? Okay, well, thank you.
Perfect.
So, we will close the public hearing at 7:06 because we don't do any action inside a public hearing. So then I would ask, is there a motion to approve Resolution 2022-1101? Motion by Sherman. Is there a second? Second by Ellinger. Roll call.
Sherman?
Yes.
Galloway?
Yes.
Radcliffe?
Yes.
Olson?
Yes.
Motion carries. 5 in favor, 0 against. So,
Ellinger?
Yes.
oh, let her
Forgot
vote.
one.
Fine. Okay. All right. Well, certainly wish you the best of luck with that. Look forward to it. Number 5, street year end certification. Hank.
Mr. Radke. Clay, if you will.
Well, about time of year again. By state statutes, we have to do the certification that I was a street superintendent appointed from January 21st to December 31st of 2022. And that's so we get our incentive payments. That's formality, we got to do it every year. And the other part of it is to be appointed for the year 23 from January 1st to December of 2023. We did this in January of this year because the state had changed the way to do it. That's why it seems like, gee, didn't we just do that? That was in January of this year because they wouldn't accept the way they used to do it with the new law, so we had to review that part. So this way we're going to do both of them at the same time so we don't have them spread out, come back a month later for the other one.
Okay. And I know in talking to our clerk, we'll go ahead and keep those two things separate, the resolution and the appointment, just so there's a clear record for the state.
Right.
Any other questions for Hank? Okay, if not, is there a motion to pass Resolution 2022-1102? Motion by Sherman,
Second.
second by Radcliffe. Roll call.
Galloway?
Yes.
Radcliffe?
Yes.
Olson?
Yes.
Ellinger?
Yes.
Sherman?
Yes.
Motion carries 5 in favor, 0 against. And then next, would there be a motion to appoint Clay H. Radke as the street superintendent, Class A, license S-1072 by the mayor for January 1st, 2023 through December 31st, 2023 for the purpose of the 2023 calendar year highway incentive payment?
So moved.
Motion by Olson. Is there a second by Sherman? Roll call.
Radcliffe?
Yes.
Olson?
Yes.
Ellinger?
Yes.
Sherman?
Yes.
Galloway?
Yes. Motion carries 5 in favor, 0 against. Okay, item number 5, we have a request to be on the agenda for clarification of city processes. Vicki? 6, sorry. Come on up, state your name and address for them. Make it official.
All right, my name is Victoria Lowry officially. My address, I guess we'll go with the bike store, is 840 9th Avenue. Sorry, the property's there. Sydney, Nebraska. The reason I'm here, I spoke at the October 17th meeting for planning and zoning. And the planning aspect has become a kind of important all the way around for not only the city, but, for individual business owners. But I think the end result is getting in the way of things. Everybody's focusing on the end result and skipping over some of the finer details that are really tripping me up. The reason I have this burr going on under my saddle here is that there was a tour of outside businesses that came through Sydney, and there was a question that was proposed to me about, well, what has the city done for me as a business? You know, and I haven't asked the city for anything, and, you know, and that's, I think, a great thing. But the city has made things a lot more difficult for me as a small business, and that, I think, is probably a bigger problem, and I don't know really why it needs to be in that scope. I know I need to protect my resources. I'm not spending taxpayer money, I'm not spending taxpayer funds, investor funds, I'm spending my own personal money to get things done and to improve things. And then I have to turn around and fight with the city over things that shouldn't have been done the way they were, but because it's the city has just taken an attitude of, we just need to get things done, and they've not really given much regard for the end result, which, you know, I am focused on because I'm the boots on the ground. I'm the one making your cash registers open and close, you know, trying to hustle, trying to make the city some more money. Meanwhile, I've got issues with, you know, the electric department and the zoning people. I've got buildings that I can't repair because of the way the city chose to run their utilities when they had other options. But they chose to do it a specific way. It was done before me, before I owned the building. You know, for whatever reasons, there's a lot of moving parts running a city. I get that. I wouldn't, you know, I wouldn't want to trade shoes some days because businesses are hard enough. But, you know, when I have to ask before I do things. You know, I go through procedures. There was Jimmy Ells was here, you know, the newspaper was here. We all kind of run through things, you know, but there's, on the city side, the city just kind of bulldozes their way through, and we're doing it for what's best. And again, I still think they're working against everything. The lack of respect that kind of gets shown for the business on the end result creates a sense of anger and outrage. I can choose to be silent, which, you know, to me is unacceptable. That creates kind of a bad taste. I feel like intelligent discussion needs to be held on some of these issues that are going on. The city seems broken, unproductive, wasteful, and misogynistic when I look at it from my perspective. The city's been planning for 10 years. They keep making these endless master plans. I feel like these master plans are backed with faulty statistics and faulty data. Like, we need this number of houses and it'll create this number of jobs, and suddenly our world's going to be fixed. That there's some perfect number and some perfect size. Omaha is going to be my example. I used this when I went to planning and zoning. They had a huge urban renewal failure that was out there. It was called Jobbers Canyon. They started it in 1989, and it dealt with ConAgra. And ConAgra was given the keys to the city of Omaha. They took over 24 blocks of downtown Omaha, and they leveled them. They were historic blocks, and it was a true shame. And they were, look at us, we're going to make things great, and they brought in jobs, and then they promptly left in 2015 and said, we're going to Chicago. You know, and that's the way big businesses run. So why does Sydney need to grow? We make promises to all these businesses, not the small guys, but we bring in job incentives to promising all these bigger companies, we'll do tap dances, we'll give you tips, we'll give you all this stuff, but meanwhile, the people that live here, that stay here, that persevere here, don't get anything. But these big companies come, they go, they leave, they do whatever, and they're given so much. And there's not much on the return side. Businesses have a lifespan. It's typically 50 years. There's not many businesses that have outlived that. Typically, you know, Montgomery Ward, Sears, you know, some of the bigger companies, they all go away. It's, you know, sadly, it's just reality. We're not a small town. We're not a big town. We keep using models that are for a bigger town, and they don't seem to be working. And I think we need to get some real work done that addresses the average that everybody keeps referring to as kind of an abstract situation, and there is no average that we need to be working toward, that maybe we need to stop all these outside prioritizing things that the city keeps circling around and doing time and time again, and look at the hierarchy that the community has put forward. You know, kind of the best example would be the playground. You know, they saw the need for that, they felt it, they wanted it, they got it done. Zoning seems to be the worst form of some of this planning that's going on in the city, I feel. It seems to be tearing apart the very community it's trying to help build. Those with the most seem to get the most. If you want younger people and lower taxes, how do these games help anybody? And it seems like a game. I realize it's public policy, but maybe the policies are wrong and maybe the policies need to be evaluated. Why do each of you choose to stay here? Everybody has their own reasons, but why do you want to stay here? I see that the focus needs to be on improving the land here in Sydney instead of the business or the business center. Businesses will come if everything else is okay. If you focus on the community, like the trails, the bikes, signage, you know, you'll have a strong and sound infrastructure, I feel, and that's what makes it a good foundation for any community. At the bike shop, we've spent 2 years watching. We've watched parking issues because there's no signage that shows where the public should be parking, could be parking. It's just kind of a free-for-all, like the Wild West. We've seen dangerous U-turns, accidents. There's an immediate need for public restrooms downtown. You know, and if you want people to mill about and hang out downtown, we need the restrooms. But, you know, that's still just someplace on a priority list that's been circling around for more than 10 years. I'm a real business. We need it right now. We don't need it in 20 years. You know, by then, my business model will have been outdated and changed. But there'll be other businesses that need something. And there's a great place to start. There's the building utility interface problems. You know, I shouldn't have to fight with the city if I'm trying to fix the building at my own personal cost. I'm not asking the city to come out and do these things, but I shouldn't have to tap dance and fight against the city to give you guys a gift, because it's truly a gift for the city, you know, the whole community. If I keep my buildings nice, and many of you guys were out running around looking at the buildings and saw the disrepair out there, you know, and it's there. Some of the business owners would love to fix it. We've noticed this from the newspaper, you know, but how do you get in there? If you run down the alleys, the dumpsters have eaten away at many buildings back there because the dumpsters on windy days sit there and rattle along and rub away part of the buildings. That same building that the Sun Telegraph's in has areas where you can just see where the bricks are just deteriorating from where the trash cans have rubbed. You know, and the city's not liable for that, but the building owner has some, you know, why do I care? Because the city's just going to destroy it anyway. There's 3 words when I think of the way the city's inability to react to the community or some of these situations are. There's 3 words that come to mind are blame, shame, and failure. Why do I think of the 3 words? Because, you know, I have a bigger company I chose to work with, and they have really pushed it that you really need to focus in on your marketing and your key things. And I'm just not seeing things move from the city, and it's kind of disappointing. I strive for myself to do better, and I hope the city will strive to do better. I'm just tired of fighting some of these fights when all I want to do is make it better for everyone. And I don't know if you guys have any questions. I have photos of everything if you'd like them. You know, and I've spoken to many people, and everybody knows kind of what's going on. And I'm happy to answer any questions. But I just wanted to bring this out.
Well, you raise a plethora of issues
Here it
and
is.
concerns, which is fine and welcome, but,
And they're my opinion.
yeah.
But
So let me at least ask, you know, see if there's anything that we can do here tonight to kind of at least address some of the concerns or maybe better understand some of the current concerns from sitting here.
well, one of them,
So your contention, and I think this will probably go where you're going, but your contention is you're being prevented from making improvements?
there are some, yes. So one of the things is I spent tens of thousands of dollars having a landscape architect come through. I brought in the main sheet for this because I had it done in April of 2022. And, you know, he came through, he took photos of the site, you know, and we were working with it. We have plans. We've been building plans. I can't execute my plans instantaneously. I have to go through procedures, planning, things like that. I've had some conversations with Hank. I've had to meet with the the state highway, and I've had these meetings. And so, we've got our plans going along, and then I turn around and I've got utilities from a neighboring business that suddenly pop up on my property that aren't even, that are just mysterious. And so now it's kind of like, well, we need to try and get a hold of the landscape architect and have some revisions done to some of our things, because what we thought was our land is no longer ours to do what we needed to do with it. It's now in this weird limbo because the electricity from another building's remodel is now suddenly on our property. So now we have to revamp some of the things we were planning on doing. So that was $20,000 worth of, work and time and effort in getting an architect out here to do things to improve the city. Because, the courtyard was truly going to be a gift, kind of for the city. Look, it's not just ugly concrete, it's something really pretty. But now we kind of have to take a step back and go, well, okay, how does this work? And then at any given time, is the city going to come through and pull another rabbit out of their hat? I don't know. I have another building a couple blocks away.
Can I, before you go, and I certainly want to get to that too, but can I ask a quick question so I better understand?
Okay.
This location, we're talking the bike shop.
The bike shop. This one's the bike shop.
So first question, the electric utility that's going to the other building, that's on yours, is that on the south end of the bike shop or the north end towards the alley?
It's toward the alley.
So it's on
On
the
that side.
on the alley side?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, because, we had, when we had the property, we were trying to decide, do we want to go back to the common wall and tear out the building, put up a huge new building, because that's within our abilities to do. If we wanted to, we could put, just like all the other buildings, build it back up as tall as we wanted per code. But, there was that discussion whether we wanted to rebuild it or if we wanted to do some other things. We worked with what we had to appease the historic character of the town and some of these other things. And then, we thought, okay, great, we're going to be able to do this in the future and do this in the future, and we have all these plans, but now we've got the utilities because somebody else is remodeling their building. So the city thought, well, it's easier, let's just put it here because there's nothing there, obviously. But it wasn't theirs to choose, it was ours. And so now we have to kind of go back and reevaluate a whole bunch of plans.
Isn't
Okay.
that being moved, though?
Maybe, I don't know, I've been told so, but I haven't seen anything.
I know
So
that GL Hewitt was going to move.
they've indicated that they would be
Okay.
glad to, but I haven't seen or heard anything to that end, so I don't know.
Okay, I can check with them.
Yeah. And
I know
then-
that they'd said they would be happy to do that. so.
Right, and we were working toward an agreement with that, but it shouldn't have happened in the first place. There were meters moved, and then I was gaslighted and told, oh no, that's always been there. But it hasn't always been in that situation. You can tell where it's been moved, you can see when it's been moved. And there's things that have gone on, and to treat other community members as if they're less than is, I think, where my rub is. And then I have the other building, and that one has electrical run along the top of it because, I don't know why. I was informed that the property that it's running above is actually who that electricity belongs to, so it should have been buried on that person's property, and it could have been buried on the property. The city chose not to. They attached it to my building, and now my building is a masonry building. Masonry is designed to move, but now because it's got all the electricity on it, it's got unistrap that ties the huge conduit that runs along the building. It's tied in there so that the building can't move, even though it's masonry and was designed to. So I've got cracks in the corner where the main electrical comes in that I can't get to repair, but it's a structural issue. And then I've got this extra load along the back end of my wall that carries all this conduit and all this wiring for other buildings that is deteriorating my building, and I need to get in to fix. But in order to get in and fix it, I need to have the electricity moved for other buildings in addition to mine. And then when I brought it up to the powers that be about maybe having some of that done, I got pointed out that, well, you can't be, technically, this isn't even your property and this isn't allowed. But meanwhile, I've got doors that exit into there. I've got my own, I've got two different heating and ventilation systems that are sitting out there There's another business that's not even affiliated with any of it, has their gas meter in there. It's almost like it should have been an alley, but somehow it was sold for private purposes, and now it's just like the Wild West out there. And there's just no way to control it. And how do you fix something when there's everybody's willing to work at it, but the city kind of created the problem, and I don't know how and why they would have just kind of went with that idea. You know, there were other options to be had, I felt.
Okay. And I'm sure city will want to comment on some of that, but just so I build a good picture in my head. So the electrical's in the back towards the alley. Is the landscaping between the building and the alley, or are you talking towards the front, towards the highway, or all of it? Just so I understand where the
It's
landscape,
that real thin walkway between there.
between the two buildings?
Yeah.
Okay. Because I haven't seen any of the
This one-
pictures.
this
I haven't
one
seen any of the
is the back
pictures
of
you're
this-
talking about.
This is I'll start it, I guess, here.
Yeah.
And
That might help council have a better picture.
Yeah, that's the back of the building with the corridor in question. We put a door on there because there were music videos being made back there where kids hanging off the conduit that the city put in. They were using it as a climbing mechanism. So here's
This is
some of
behind the bike shop.
Right, no, this is where we were
This is her
we were
other building?
anticipating that being the bike shop warehouse, but it wound up, we needed actually more
This is your other
space,
building you're
so we had to
talking
get a third building. And this one has the cracks that are underneath the conduit that I need to try and get in and get repaired, but in order to do that, I have to shut down pretty much half of a city block to do it.
Yeah, we visited.
Here's the alleyway inside. There's some rubble on the ground that you'll see, and that's where there's anchors that were drilled into the masonry, and water has gotten into those joints because that's what water does.
Yeah.
And it's creating an issue, and I've got leaks on the inside and, it's coming apart on the outside. And so then,
And this one is where?
that's the corridor on the other side of the door. That's that alleyway that
Okay.
that door leads to.
Okay.
It's just the other side of the doorway.
And
My building's the one on the left. It's the city's.
long way to get there, but
That's okay.
what I wanted to ask or be able to ask intelligently was, somewhat intelligently, were there any codes built or zoning codes or anything that were contrary to the landscaping plan you had?
Oh, for the bike shop?
Yeah.
Or for this building?
I just, the bike shop, I wanted to talk about
Yeah,
that
on the bike
before
shop.
we got to the
Yeah,
other stuff.
on the bike shop, there were none.
Okay.
No,
I was just, my own curiosity.
yeah,
Okay.
there were no codes that I, well,
Okay.
the state highway had some about specific trees and how the trees could or could not hang over.
Right, because the state highway gets involved with balconies, trees, lights, all of that,
Right,
yeah.
and so you.
And that's
only
kind of
had-
why, that's why I was asking.
And the
that.
highway had, the highway has their own little deal, and my architect worked with the highways forms, and we picked out the trees that the highway would allow for. And the highway department was thrilled. They said, as long as it's on my property, it's my problem, and that they would be happy.
I've heard that before.
They are strict.
It's your problem when it costs money.
Yes,
And if I have a limb in their way, they will make sure I take care of that.
If they
right.
want it scooped, it's ours, right?
So let me just ask, what was any response you got from the planning commission?
I just asked them pretty much for their time and their attention to
To
the
look
matter
into
and
it.
to think better when they make some of their choices, to me.
There was no decision asked, but they did
Yes.
listen to
Right.
everything she said and said they would take it into consideration. It's working on the master comp
And
plan
that's
going
pretty much
forward.
where I'm at here too. I don't know that there's really anybody that can do anything. I need to pay to have a structural engineer come out and find out if I can even get air conditioners put on that building. Because when the building was originally designed on this other building, it wasn't designed to carry live loads. And those machines are live, because they move and they wiggle and they jiggle. So I have to find out if I can even get them put on the building. And we were trying to figure out a way so that we could have 3 separate units in there with proper egress and stuff. And all that comes down to, well, the electrical's in the way, and so we have to lose a lot of things in order to get this building put into the right place for modern code because of previous procedures that the city's been allowed to do, or allowed to have happened. someplace down.
So the first step is just to see if some of these things can even be moved.
Yeah, if I can even do anything about them, and how much of this stuff can be repaired. Because I'm not a licensed structural engineer, and that's what this building needs at this point. So,
Right.
and I'm doing my part as a community member. I'm just, it's like, man, I'm spending, every step I take forward, I have to come back and kind of bargain with the city when I should just be able to get it done and fixed and make everybody proud. Because that's my goal. Build a better community. So.
Vicki, if I can ask you a question here, and
Yes,
that
sir.
you brought up Omaha and the,
Jobbers Canyon.
ConAgra and how they took advantage of the city. And then you made a reference, without specifics, to big business in Sydney doing something similar, taking advantage of the city, and that I'd like a little more specifics on that.
Well, like when Camping World came through, they were looking at being here, wink, wink.
Yeah.
And they wanted, they were trying to get a better deal from Cheyenne, so they were putting on a position here, is my perspective of the situation. But yet they were kind of, well, what's the city going to give us? What are you guys going to do for us? And that's always the number one question that a bigger business will ask. Sure, well, we're going to come to the community. What are you going to do for us? What are you going to give us?
They all ask that.
They always say that.
They all ask that.
You know what? And I'm sorry, I've got boots on the ground. I'm invested here. What are you guys going to do for me? And Jimmy L's or anybody. I mean, we should be more higher up the priority chain than somebody like Camping World or whoever.
Well, I agree with you, but I think the key thing there is, are the small businesses asking for that, like the big businesses do?
I think the small ones have been, I think they're pretty much been whipped and scared at this point, where they're just lying there waiting for something else to, I'm stunned at how many taxes I keep getting hit with. I got my waste reduction tax for achieving an accomplishment and making my sales over a certain amount, so they gave me a prize of another tax. I'm like, yay! And so, there's no end to it, and then, we're gonna get more taxes probably today, with the new, what is it, minimum wage increases. So there's always things that are impacting, and it makes small business owners kind of put their heads down. Some of them love a good fight, and some of them just try to squeak by.
Understood.
So it's a rough world out there. Didn't realize it when we started this.
I would encourage the fight.
And we're trying to, and I see a lot of groups out there, trying to shake things up for Sydney and create a better atmosphere, and I'm, in my small way, I'm trying to do my part too, saying, what I've seen and trying to make it better for the next group. Because that's my duty.
Well, I would agree with you on your statements about focus on infrastructure, and I know statements I've made in the past is we need to first and foremost take care of what we've got, which means our existing businesses and people, and then work on an eye towards the future and growth. So I don't disagree with you on that.
Because, I keep hearing everybody, yeah, we're going to get, a new business up in Cabela's building, with 2,000 new people or something. And I'm like, there's no more houses. And I get we have a subdivision ready to go, but, the missile silo is going to happen and all this thing, but I don't see us being able to sustain bringing that much more housing in right now with what we have without doing some serious work on our infrastructure. We can't get the kids back and forth, on bicycles, and we can't get, out-of-towners knowing where they can park so that they can stop and eat some food if they have a trailer, then we've got some issues as a town, I feel.
I would agree with you. I think it needs to be a place that, looks like a place people want to be, and that will take care of a lot of things. But, anybody else have any questions or comments for Victoria?
I'd like to hear David's response
To what she's talking about, are you talking about the conduit on the side of the building or the bike shop?
just the generalities that she's brought up.
We did meet out there, or I wasn't there, but I know that electric superintendent and chief building inspector met out there. And I know that GL Hewitt has said that they will move theirs, because we can't move ours if they don't move theirs. But they did say that they would pay to move theirs. I don't know why they haven't done that. Maybe they're just not to that point in their project, because they're revamping that whole building for office space. It's gonna look very nice when they get done as well, so. I don't know if maybe they're just not at that point in their project yet where they're doing the wiring. I'm not sure. We can check on that and find out, but that should help that problem. As far as the conduit on the building, Mike can probably speak a little bit more to that than I can, but I think it might have been an easement with the previous building owner. Is that what the case was, or?
So typically.
I think that's what I'd heard.
City policy is we get it to the property line and then let the property owner take it to their metering point. No different than anyone's house. They own the wire that goes from the property line to the metering point. Really, physically, the only thing that the city owns on that is the metering equipment, and the potential boxes that the meter sits in. Specifically to the conduit on the back of the wall there, when Mr. Steffens was going to put apartments upstairs in the,
Yeah, that's
I
what it
don't know what
was.
building it is, above Ferris Engineering or somewhere in that vicinity. He worked with the previous building owner, and we kind of worked, the three of us, I wouldn't say it was all just Steffens and Mr. Draper, and then the city kind of worked a plan out to where they would, everyone would be happy. In fact, one of the things that Mr. Draper requested was we hold off until he figures out his gutter system. So he was putting new gutters on at the time, if I recall, and so we ended up lowering the pipes down a little bit so they wouldn't be in the way. But really, that belongs to the owner of the current building, and it was an agreement worked out between those two. And when we do the underground conversion such as that, the current property owner signs an agreement. Basically, we work with the property owners. We don't try to be like, oh, we're putting it here or not. Similar to the GLU building, that was a situation where they selected that location, not the city. So, they selected to put it on that wall, and where the barrier of the wall is, I guess I can see the complaint there that they could build up to that wall, that metering equipment would be in the way. However, GL Hewitt, to my understanding, is going to move that at their cost. So
did the city have a structural engineer look at that building before they, when they were, the other building with the conduit that goes along the top of it with Mr. Steffens? Was it just the city that determined that they knew the structural capacity for that building when they put the strapping on?
We only get it to the property line. Mr. Steffens put in the metering bank and all the equipment on the back of the building. So we worked in conjunction, but again, he hired an electrician to install the metering bank and all the stuff that feeds. The city didn't, I don't know, I can't remember the electrician. We could find the electrician that installed the metering bank. The city did not, to answer your question, the city did not hire a structural engineer to do that.
But they didn't do the work on that either.
We worked in conjunction with,
As far as up to the property line.
we worked in conjunction with the electrician.
Okay.
Yeah. But again, it wasn't like our responsibility per policy is to the property line. So if your line to your house goes bad underground, you would be responsible to replace that.
Much like a sewer race, but that would be right.
And this is part of the deal with the procedures and the policies that kind of get put in place. So, and this was all before the two previous, the building that Steffens owned is owned by somebody else, and my building was owned by somebody else. You have new people, new blood, but I'm dealing with issues that were created by nobody in the party. And I have structural issues because of it, but there's no recourse, there's no anything. I just have to try and figure out how to save a building and how to meet the current code, all because of the way the city allowed things to kind of happen when they should have been the more proactive group because they're the city. And they should have been able to say, hey, you know, glad you don't want to do X, Y, or Z, but, you know, this isn't your building, you know, and let's not even address putting stuff on other people's.
So let me ask, are there city ordinances that would address or prohibit how something gets installed beyond the city's responsibility?
I do not
I
believe
don't
so. I don't
think
think we
so.
have the authority by state statute.
To say how it gets installed?
We go to the edge. Now, you could have electrical codes that might say this
Well, that's
isn't the
kind of
way
where
it
I'm
goes.
going, if there's
But it would be an
anything-
electrical code that says it has
State
to meet these
electrician.
kinds of
Basic requirements?
right. They wouldn't have what it can be put on or that it has to be, it's not going to have that. That's the building owner's decision.
Mike,
And
how did you assist?
we don't
the-
have that.
Excuse me. How did you assist that electrician that installed that there?
I mean, we just work.
Ran the
like,
line through it.
We work in conjunction.
Power
with
to
them.
the
Obviously,
meter.
the meter.
Ran the
The
line.
downtown is truthfully a very difficult area because there's a lot of blind
Alleys are
spots
small.
and things to that nature. But we basically play kind of a go-between the two property owners in that situation where we're like trying to come up with a acceptable solution for all parties involved. At the time, Mr. Draper was more than happy to have it put there. In fact, him and Mr. Stephens we talked it over, and he was happy with that being there. Truth, I mean, it could be because it was kind of going in conjunction with the underground conversion project, so he was happy to power lines were getting buried and there wasn't going to be wires hanging over his building and things like that. I'm speculating, I don't know, but as far as the code issue, like, I would imagine that the state electrical inspector had to inspect that. That's outside of city jurisdiction, but I'm sure that he inspected that and made sure everything was kosher from a structural or electrical standpoint, I should
The
say.
state does the electrical inspections. Now, if it was like a water line going to a house or sewer line, our city inspector would inspect that.
And I'm not, I mean,
No,
to your point, I think you're
yeah.
right. If we want to change the policy, we sure,
Yeah.
maybe it's more of a policy discussion. Do you want us to go further past the property line? That's something that the city could take into consideration, although you're bringing on that extra liability.
Well, to that point, you know, there were, at some point, you know, asking an owner, are you okay with me attaching to this to your building? You know, is he a structural engineer? Does he know? You know, these are your buildings. In a nutshell, you guys are you and the county are the ones that get the revenue off these buildings, whether they're up, down, or just flat land. You know, and how your city looks is all determined on all these codes. And when, you know, whether it's me, whether it's somebody down the road, you know, they're going to be talking about, wow, nobody gave a crap about these buildings. You know, you've got Elson House over here where the whole back wall is washed out on their bricks. You know, because, you know, previous owners only cared what was going on in the front door, not the back door. You know, as long as the front door was functioning and making money, then they didn't care what happened to the back side of the building at all. And that's kind of this situation, but what do owners know about building construction? You know, who's the authority that should be brought in about, you know, do we just randomly let another building owner dictate by another building owner that we're going to attach this to a building and see what happens? You know, because that's not really how construction or certain things should happen, I don't think. And the city should have kind of said, well, yeah, you guys can do that, but, you know, they should know some minor construction aspects and know that that shouldn't have been something that went on. I mean, that's just,
I will say, and
yeah.
there is pipe ran all over. So I mean, from a building perspective, I don't think there's a great deal of danger. And I'm not trying to be argumentative with you, I'm just saying that,
Yeah.
like, there's conduits all over sorts of, you know, air conditioning lines have conduits running all over them, you know. So I'm not saying
No.
I don't think there's anything structurally dangerous about it.
Well, my building is surrounded on 3 sides. It's basically, you've got a U shape on this one little building. There's conduit along the side, there's conduit along the back, and there's conduit along the 3rd side that is on the back side. It just doesn't have it in the front. And it is a masonry building, and masonry is designed to take on water. You know, and it's a breathable material. It's just like wood, you know, all these construction items our breathing systems. And this building's designed to move. Metal is not one of those options, and when you take metal and you fasten it to the building, you're changing the way that building is designed. That gets into being an engineering aspect. And when you've got electricians coming through pretending, well, we're just putting it up there, that's great. One electrician did one thing, another electrician did another electrician was allowed to do something else. Meanwhile, I've got a masonry building wrapped in concrete, or, with concrete clad on the outside that has this huge conduit holding it still, that it wasn't designed to have, which creates an issue. And someplace, somewhere, somebody needs to have some oversight besides just one building owner, I think, for your buildings. If you want your buildings to live longer, somebody else needs to be kind of looking at these buildings when they get these things going on, is my thought.
Yeah.
And that's a valid point, because I mean, from the state electrical inspector, I don't know what they're looking, I mean, I'm telling you
Yeah.
that conduit goes all over lots of buildings, and we don't have necessary jurisdiction over that. We hook it up to the property line, and then the electrician takes the lines on the back of your building, on the boot. That was put in by electrician, and there's pipes going over to those as well. I mean, I don't know, is there something from a building perspective that, like, when the electrician pulls a permit, he pulls it through the state electrical inspector, and to be honest with you, I couldn't answer whether the electrical inspector looks at the structure as well, or do you just care about how it's hooked up and make sure it's safe electrically?
Right.
Unfortunately, a lot of work is done. A huge amount of these buildings out here, known as multiple white buildings, so they've got a main veneer of brick, and then they've got another layer of brick behind that. They can be up to 32, 38 inches wide as far as masonry is concerned. Vicki brings up an excellent point that some of this work is just being done willy-nilly and not having somebody who really knows about brick. I'm not that guy, by the way, but I do know that in Denver, whenever we had anything attached to a building, especially of height, it had to be engineered, period. And so a lot of the things that are attaching to these buildings, it's a very spooky thing, because the grout in most of these buildings is a high sulfur content, and so that grout gets really brittle
Yeah.
over time, and you could literally just go and it starts falling out. That's part of the problem.
Well, and I hear everything you're saying, and I think part of it is we have to identify what are the existing codes and policies and things that are in place, and to see if those are being followed or not. That's the starting point. And then the second part, which is getting to what you're saying, is then do we need to identify other codes and policies so that way we deal with this in a more consistent manner?
And it's all just dealing with infrastructure. If you
Right.
if you want your core to be there, if you want your core to look better, okay, how do we try to move past some of this? Because, if I have another building owner, that took liberties and, well, we're just gonna slap this on your building and good luck to you. I'm trying to fix it, but now I'm gonna get set back, It's just a game of pass the buck, and small business never is going to win on this game. Because there isn't the deep pockets. They do not,
Yeah.
we're not in California.
The city would never go slap something on someone else's
No,
building
another building, yeah.
without their permission.
Well,
So,
even if I said, yeah, go
Yeah.
ahead and do it, I'm not an engineer and I shouldn't.
I mean, you are saddled with previous owners'
Right.
decisions, I will
Right.
say that,
Right.
but.
But even as a business owner, you shouldn't even be necessarily speaking to me without an engineer. If you're gonna modify a structure, because that's just something that you needed,
But that, to be clear also, though, that's two business owners that were really making those decisions.
Right.
The city was kind of out of that. I don't want to.
So there's some responsibility there when you purchase a building to
Right.
make amends there with the previous owner on that.
well,
Well,
yeah. And that's true. And there's always that buyer beware kind of thing. We did our due diligence, you know, when we bought our gas station, making sure if we had gas tanks or not.
Sure.
And knowing that we were gonna have to deal with, you know, what kind of remediation,
Mm-hmm.
you know, and, you know, there's, you know, all you can do is what's on the records.
Right.
But if things were done just kind of good old boys club, then being the new girl in town, you don't get to know what's in the boys club.
No, I think that's
So.
why they have inspections when you buy things.
And Marshall, when you required an engineer to look at something, I mean, who pays that cost?
Whoever's doing the work.
So the
Yeah,
business,
so it's the owner.
so if we made a policy that required a business owner to get an engineer before they did anything, that would be a prohibitive cost to the business.
Yes.
Typically, it's, engineers are not cheap.
Right.
By any stretch. Most letters that I've ever seen are
But the
between
reasoning,
$250 and the
but
sky.
it's their liability, you know, and they're putting their,
Cost us 20
Yeah.
their
Say the
stamp.
word.
and
They're signing off on it.
They're signing off on saying this is what's right and this is what's best. Kind of like going to the doctor. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thanks, Vicki.
Thank you, Ricky.
No, I certainly appreciate you coming forward to visit about a lot of that stuff and taking the time to visit the planning commission as well, because that's where a lot of those discussions start and originate, so good to have those kind of discussions. Staff, anything else on that? Okay. Council, any other questions? No? Okay, all right, well, thank you. Moving on then, item number 7, claims for October 2022. I got to review those,
No, we were checking that.
and,
Oh, Roger,
yeah. And,
I'm gonna wait for Bob.
was it Bob?
No,
What'd you say?
saying I'm waiting for Bob to weigh in.
Oh,
Oh, we did.
I missed that.
yeah. Hey, far be it for me to
Barbara
question,
tonight.
far be it for me to question Lori's work. It was outstanding, as usual.
That's true. It always is Lori's work. We're just looking at it.
I thought claims were fine.
Well, I move we approve them.
I second it.
Motion by Sherman, second by Olson. Roll call.
Olson,
Yes.
Elwinger,
Yes.
Sherman,
Yes.
Galloway.
Yes.
Radcliffe.
Yes.
Motion carries 5 in favor, 0 against. Item number 8, budget reports for October 2022.
Sorry.
Here it comes.
What you guys are all here for, right?
Yep.
I know
The
we're-
answer is not a lot of.
Evening, guys. Lane Kazire, Finance Director. Don't have a bunch. We're just at the beginning of the year, so property tax, pretty much right where we were last year at this point. Sales tax, we're a little above our 8% mark. Fees for service, a little bit above where we are, and that's largely because of building permits. There must have been one heck of a permit that came in. I think it was the airport's. Right, Marshall, the airport had a pretty good sized building permit.
Hanger?
This-
The
Oh,
hanger
yeah,
they're
that's
building?
what it was,
So-
yeah.
So that's a big chunk of that. The state, federal, county, we're just pretty consistent. No franchise or admin fees really to talk about, and nothing in the other category really to talk about either. We're pretty consistent overall with where we've been in the past, so.
Only a month
Too early
in,
to
huh?
tell.
Okay, any questions for Lane or staff? If not, is there a motion to approve budget reports for October?
So moved.
Motion by Radcliffe, is there a second? Second by Sherman, roll call.
Elwinger.
Yes.
Sherman, Galloway,
Yes.
Radcliffe,
Yes.
Olson.
Yes.
Motion carries 5 in favor, 0 against. City managers report.
I didn't have a whole lot this time. I just wanted to thank staff and everybody else that contributed to Trunk or Treat. It was really great. I think we had just short of 900 kids is what they're estimating. It just gets bigger and bigger every year, and I thought it was a really fantastic event, so thanks for everybody, and thanks for all the businesses and people in the community that provided trunks too, so. And then the only other thing I wanted to mention was I still I'm waiting to hear back from council on the visioning and strategic planning session. And I'm thinking maybe some of you are waiting till after tonight to give me that, and that's fine. We should probably know them by tomorrow. So anyway, I'd like to try to get that scheduled as soon as possible. So let's schedule for that. That'd be great. That's all I have.
Okay.
Nothing.
Nothing. Hank, anything?
We got an alley tore up in the back behind Grandma Joe's a little bit, replacement panels, so if anybody had you.
Good to know,
Broken up panels, just so you know.
because they do ask sometimes.
Yes.
Yep. Marshall, anything else? Autumn? No. Lane, we're not going to let talk. Michael? Okay. Council Marva,
I'm good.
Bradley.
Of course I have something.
I know it.
Well, echo David's comments, the trunk or treat, it's a great thing that the city puts on. Great costumes every year by the city. And it's always good to see people come in and address their concerns, working things out. I took down some notes. There's a lot of stuff that, I don't think anybody in here can sit here and say that things can't be better. I know I could do my own personal job and life better than I probably do. And constructive criticism is always something that's real easy to deal with. And if we want to work together and make this city someplace that the people that are here want to stay and people want to come and join us in the fun, that's awesome. So I really appreciate when people come to meetings and share and let us know what we can do better and what we can improve in. I will say Corey Keene and your neighbor, Sarah, would be really good contacts with that E3. I've been involved a little bit, but I know they do have lots of incentives and opportunities for existing businesses for loans and such as well. So reach out to them for some things, because you are right. If you're already here invested in the community, we should care just as much for you as we do for luring someone else. And then, I'll just have this down.
Bob?
I would just endorse what Brad just said. We need to take care of the people that are here too, and not just the ones that are thinking about coming here. So,
Bert? Yeah, that was my theme, and I mentioned that earlier. My concern has always been, let's take care of what we've got first, make sure that we're doing our due diligence on that, as we're keeping an eye towards the future, but we have to keep those things in order for the betterment of everybody. And to your guys' points as well, I think communication is critical. So appreciate very much you coming forward to voice concerns, appreciate input from staff and stuff, because communicating is the only way that we can all keep working towards our common goal, is to make Sydney be as good as it can be. So all of it, very much appreciated. And with that,